also want to invite our audience to take a moment to just connect to your body, connect to your breathing, connect to the space you are in. And I also want to invite you to connect to this large, big field of consciousness and of our topic of conscious evolution. And today I'm so excited and so full of joy, and I'm so honored that I can welcome you, Craig Hamilton, to this Conscious Evolution Summit.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here, and we're speaking about one of my favorite topics. So what could be a better way to spend the time?
Same to me.
Thanks to everyone who came and is tuning in as well.
Yeah.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, and maybe before we go deeper into this journey, maybe we can kind of clarify a few how we use words actually. And I would like to start. How would you define consciousness, Craig?
Oh, okay. Well, I tend to use consciousness, well, in a few different ways that all kind of weave together. So, I mean, simply put, I would say I would use consciousness in the same way that scientists who study consciousness use consciousness. And that is, you know, consciousness is experience. Consciousness is the part of the universe that is having an experience. So, you know, we can look around and see objects, you know, rocks, buildings, pavements, cars, and, you know, bodies, human bodies, animal bodies. We can say, okay, there's all that going on. And then there's an experience happening. And, you know, human beings are here having an experience. Animals are also having an experience. It's not necessarily the same one we're having. Perhaps plant life is having an experience too. We don't, you know, seems like something is being experienced on the plant level, probably very different than animals, very different than humans. And so, you know, simply put, if we just want to say we talk about consciousness, we're talking about the inner world, the inner dimension, our consciousness, our experience of life. And so then we say, okay, so there's experience happening all the time. There's this inner world of perceiving and knowing, and then of course thought arises, and we're thinking about things, emotions are present, we're feeling those things. Consciousness then is the experience of those inner things as well. With consciousness is the experience of those thoughts, it's the experience of those feelings. And you know, where this of course ties into a spiritual conversation is when we start to really look at what experience is, what consciousness is, we discover that there's something very mysterious going on here. That the very that the part of us that's having an experience, that the experience of life is something that I'm having, you're having, you know, everyone who's listening to this is here, present, having an inner experience, an inner life. And when we start to penetrate into spiritual awakening, and we start to penetrate into the deeper layers of who and what we are, we start to realize, well, consciousness isn't limited to me and my mind. It's not something that's just happening inside my head. In fact, when I experience consciousness, you experience consciousness, there's kind of one experience, or there's one consciousness that's happening. You know, a few moments ago, you invited us to tune into the field, or to tune into, you know, what's happening between us. We start to realize, oh, consciousness is universal. Consciousness is primordial. Consciousness is the essential experiencer of the whole cosmos, and that when you are here and present, when I'm here and present, we're just partaking in something that is always already here. And anyway, this deepens and deepens. So you may have been looking for a simple definition, but I don't necessarily have one. So, I mean, maybe to make it simple, I just mean awareness, you know, I mean, consciousness, awareness, experience. And then we mean lots of deep and profound things as well that have to unfold as we go.
And I mean, I remember a moment, it was, I would say it was about 22, 24 years ago in my life. There I had an experience which really kind of shook me quite a lot, because I was meditating and kind of really meditating without a goal, without a journey, really just being present. And then there was a moment where I was out of my body. So what I was seeing my body from maybe 4 meters above the physical body. And I don't know how long this took. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes. There was no time. I didn't notice, but this experience kind of was really something for me, because in this moment I really, as you said, I experienced that there is something which is not my body.
Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, and so when we start talking about spiritual awakening, we start looking into the essence of who and what we are. One of the things, or let's just say one way to look at what spiritual awakening is, one way to understand this mysterious thing of enlightenment or awakening, is to say it's when consciousness discovers itself. So here you are, consciousness. I'm consciousness. I'm a inner being having an experience of life, having awareness. But we spend our whole lives pretty much only aware of things. We're aware of objects, the world around us. We're aware of other people. Even when we think about ourself, we're imagining an object in the mind that we're aware of, and we're aware of inner objects, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations. So we spend our whole life just with our attention, with our awareness, going from one thing to the next to the next. And never in school, never did our parents or our school teachers, raise the question, well, what happens if you were to become aware of that which is aware? What would happen if you became aware of consciousness? What if you became aware of yourself, self-aware, and turned the attention not to any object that you can construct or perceive, but to the subject of experience, the experiencer, the perceiver. And this is one of the essential spiritual practices in any awakening context, is kind of the search for the perceiver or the subject. In fact, I see you have a picture of the Indian sage Ramana Maharshi there, and he was famous for his, driving people to find the self, search for who it is that's asking these questions, who it is that's listening to these words. And that was itself a quest for consciousness, a pointer to invite us to become aware of consciousness itself. And that, we might think, oh, well, yeah, consciousness, and we might just kind of try to think about consciousness, or, yeah, I'm aware that I'm conscious. And, of course, I'm aware I'm conscious. I'm, always aware. But this is different. This is an invitation to take our attention off of anything at all, and let and see what happens when you remove. We can even do a little bit right now. Let's just try this. So here we are, and, become aware of everything around you and the space you're in. Everybody, just, you're looking at this video on a computer or a phone and watching it. You're aware of the room surrounding you. You can hear my voice, Puria's voice, etc. And just in this moment, gently bring your attention to where the experience is happening, to who is, to who or what is having the experience. Where, and there isn't a place, by the way. So when I say where, you're not going to find it in your head. You're not going to find it in your body. But notice the consciousness that's having this experience right now. That's hearing the words, that's seeing what's around you. Just see if you can keep bringing your attention to the experiencer, the perceiver, the awareness. Now, to the degree that you might be noticing that, and you might, for some of us, it's probably happening in little glimpses. For someone else, it might be happening in a profound way. Someone else, it might be confusing. That's okay. But to the degree that this is happening right now, and you're starting to notice consciousness, one of the things you might notice about it is that it seems limitless. It's there when you notice consciousness, you begin to notice, oh, it's not like it's something that's sitting in a place somewhere in my head or outside my head or in my body. It doesn't have a location, and in a sense it's immediately I become aware that it's everywhere. And if you stay with this noticing of consciousness a little further, notice that the consciousness, awareness, is who you are. This isn't, now you might have, we spend a lot of our time thinking about ourselves. So we have an image in our mind of who we are. And we think, I look this way and I sound this way and I believe in these things and I have these values and this is what's important to me and this is my job in the world and this is my purpose. And we have a whole story, a whole set of concepts about the self. And it's not that those are all wrong, but suddenly we discover consciousness and we realize, oh, well, this consciousness is also aware of that person I think I am. It's aware of all those stories and all those parts of myself. So clearly I'm something much more than that person I think I am. I'm this now, I've now discovered that I'm this infinite, boundaryless space and awareness, and that all of those things that I tend to think of as myself are just constructed. They're just things my mind sort of made up and put together. Again, not that we don't have to make them wrong or determine that they're wrong, but just we start to discover that we're something so much bigger and so much deeper than any idea we could ever have about ourselves. And so let's just take a moment to be silent in this again for a second, and just, even if it didn't work before, just try it again. So just noticing all the objects in your consciousness, the thoughts, the feelings, the words arising, the room around you, the computer screen. And now notice who's aware of all that. Who or what is aware of all of that right now? Just as intensely as you can, rivet your attention onto awareness itself, onto consciousness itself. Really bring your attention to consciousness and hold it there. And notice the pull to go back to thoughts and feelings and objects, and just see if you can just for a moment just stay in this place of being aware of awareness. takes a certain courage. You have to let the world fall away temporarily. Just let it all fall away and let yourself kind of fall into the infinity of your own being. Okay. Well, so we didn't know where we were going to go when we started. So we're just exploring consciousness, really. This is so far all just been a kind of reflection on your question of what is consciousness. And maybe I'll hand it back to you and see where you want to guide the conversation from there.
What would you say, Craig? What is the value of those mystical or spiritual experiences where we really get to know and experience this? I would call it a spaciousness, it's space, it's limitlessness. I had a feeling as if space is just sailing in the universe. Yeah, how? Because what I realize is that, I mean, I'm dealing with consciousness since almost 35 years or so, and what I sense is that in a way this is always available, this is always there. It depends on where I shift my awareness or my attention or my focus, or I need to shift it from objects or from something to there, and then it's always just there. But I can also see that when you have an experience where when you tasted it, it seems to support, to navigate, or to kind of, even though it's not always the same, but it seems to support. Or what is your perspective on that?
Just finish the sentence you were going to say. You said it seems to support.
It seems
Just go
to
a little further.
This deepening, or this also valuing, this recognizing that there is a value in this unseen, in this not objectness, where parents, schools, public doesn't talk so much about, but there is a, even though it's not an object, but there is a substance in it.
Okay, I see what you're getting at. Yeah. Well, so what's the value of it? It's a great question, because it's one that we can address on a couple different, very significant levels. So on a fundamental level, when we begin to discover that we're not limited by this body and mind, and that when we begin to touch into this really vast sacred context for our life, we begin to, it's like we're discovering that reality is three dimensions. So it's as if we lived in a flat world, and we then discovered reality was three-dimensional. We're discovering this, that there's an inherent context of sacredness and meaning to life that is not there necessarily in the just world as we find it. It's an emergent profoundness that when we really begin to tap into it, we are overwhelmed by the beauty of it, by the significance of it, by there's a quality of love that begins to flow that it's not attached. Often we mean so many things by love. In our culture, we mean attachment to another person. We mean things we really like. We mean strong feelings. There's so many things we mean by love, but there's a source of love that's just this boundless, infinite love, and we realize that's actually the nature of things is love, that at the essence of all this, there's this love, and it begins to sweep us away. So there's a very profound mystical dimension to the cosmos that when we begin to discover it, it just fills our life with meaning and with love, and with a fundamental contentment also in the face of whatever life brings our way. There's a way it's sort of like, well, yes, I don't want bad things to happen. I want good things to happen. Sure, as I navigate life, obviously I care about it all, but on a fundamental level, we're discovering a context in which, it's not just that everything's okay, it's that at its essence, everything is so much more than okay, that at the essential level, there's a goodness to this and a wholeness to this that sort of recontextualizes all the minute details of our lives in a much bigger context. So that has a lot of value for anybody who discovers it. It's like, oh my goodness, my life is now multidimensional, and I'm discovering I'm this big, vast power and depth. But it also has very practical value, and this is worth looking kind of precisely at. So what happens when we start to become awake to who and what we really are, and we begin to become a space for this deeper dimension of self to inhabit, to take root, to express itself, is we start to become optimized as a human being. So, if we think about human beings by and large, think about your friends, family, coworkers, people people you run into on a daily basis. How many people are really optimal versions of themselves? Most of us are not all that optimized. We have all this dysfunction. If you just kind of look at how we are, we've got limiting beliefs that we can't get beyond, and they hold us back. We have habitual ways of reacting to difficulties that are very self-limiting. We have assumptions about other people that get in our way of really being with each other. We have all this whole story about ourselves that we've made up over our whole life that prevents us from really being a free, natural, full expression of even just who we are in a relative sense. So, we're just where we're at as a species, you could say, we're not really very evolved yet. We're sort of fairly, we're getting by. It's kind of a miracle that we're getting by, given how primitive we are, right? I mean, and how many of us there are, and how complex the whole world is. And I know you have Terry Patton in this summit, and he's talking a lot right now about how we're not really getting by, and we may be near the end, and we may be really blowing it, and a lot of people are pointing that out. So so we're not doing that great as a species, really. Even though a lot of miraculous things have come from us, and we have all this capacity. And so, but as we begin to awaken to consciousness, let's just to keep it where we've been so far. So what happens is we start to realize that we're something so much vaster and larger than all those stories, all those beliefs, all the things that limit us, and those habits, that now we start to discover a freedom from all that. We start to discover a way of being that's free from all that, where, in a sense, things that used to hold us back or used to get in our way aren't in our way anymore. And so it's kind of, we start to be unleashed into life. Now, practically speaking, what starts to happen is we also start to discover a whole set of abilities or capacities that previously were not available to us, that now seem to be natural. So we find that we have access to a kind of wisdom faculty or wisdom capacity, a capacity for penetrating insight, intuitive wisdom that is, and I don't mean wisdom like, you know, big, deep philosophical ideas about the nature of reality, although we have that too. But I mean, you know, the ability to see into a problem that's right in front of us, right to the core of it, to really see what's causing it, and to really see a solution kind of all at once with penetrating insight, or to see into another person and what they're struggling with, and what simple thing they need to do maybe to get beyond the thing that's in their way. We start to discover this wisdom is a natural part of our own higher nature, and it flows. And if we get out of the way, get out of its way, that it starts to flow more and more. We also find that, you know, I mentioned this profound love before. Well, that love in human form takes the form of care. And we start to find a kind of superhuman care where we care so deeply about everything. We care so much that the right thing happens, or that the best thing happens in every situation. We really care for the greatest good in any moment that we're in any organization we're a part of, in our relationships, in just an encounter with someone on the street or in daily life. We're just it starts to be infused with this deep love and care for everyone's elevation, everyone's evolution. We start to really care about evolution, that the positive, most positive things are happening. And that's a kind of superhuman quality too, because so often we feel limited in our ability to care by our own problems, our own needs to be healed, or, you know, whatever we imagine we're not ready to, we can't care, or it'll, you know, deplete us or whatever. But we don't feel that way anymore. It's a boundless care. It's a river of care that just flows through our life. We start to discover a freedom from the need to know, the need to predict, the need to be certain. And if you look at one of the things that gets in people's way in life the most, it's their beliefs, their fixed ideas about things. It's our already knowing how things should be, what's supposed to happen, what is happening now. You know, all this kind of compulsive need for certainty falls away because we're starting to discover an ability to know directly in each moment. And so what happens then is we start to have a real innocence about us and a fluidity of mind. So even if we're passionate about something, we're not closed to information that might radically challenge our worldview and redirect our energy somewhere else. You know, so you know, we're even advocating for a certain plan or solution, and then new information comes in and we immediately take it in fully because we're not defended against it. And we say, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Well, now that you can see that, I will give my energy to that agenda, and we're willing to flex and flow. So we become very flexible, adaptive, fluid, responsive. You know, anyway, we could talk about a lot of different dimensions, but the simple thing I'm trying to say is that I think many of us, we could, if we did an exercise where we sort of took out a journal and we said, write down the qualities of the optimal human or the optimized human, like would any of us be at our best? And we'd probably say all of it, you know, like we're, you know, intuitive, we're wise, we're loving and caring, we're flexible, we're fluid, we're adaptive, dynamic, we're strong, courageous, trusting. You know, we have a kind of trust that lets us take risks. You know, all these things, they start to happen very organically. And a lot of the things that maybe we've spent our life energy trying to cultivate, you know, a lot of us are trying to be stronger, trying to be more confident, trying to be more trusting, trying to be more loving and kind, and trying to be wiser in our decision. You know, it all starts to emerge from our becoming rooted in this deeper dimension of who we are. So it's got, in addition to immense kind of essential value, it's got an immense practical value too. So
and would you say that bringing awareness, our attention to this awaken or deeper dimension of what we are, of this consciousness, that in itself supports maturing our personalities, our psyche, or
it can, and it should, but but it depends how we do it. I mean, here's the trick, of course, with anything, you know, we have to be honest, and our motivation has to be in the right place. So what I mean by that is that, you know, there's a term that's become, you know, in common usage in recent years called spiritual bypassing. I don't know if you've heard this idea, but the idea of spiritual bypassing is that, you know, a lot of, you know, you mentioned you've been interested in spirituality and consciousness for 35 years. I think you said, you know, a lot of us have been doing a lot of work for a long time and meditating and going on retreats and workshops. And when you look around, sometimes you notice, this person says they've been meditating for 50 years, but they still seem very bottled up and angry and limited. And, you know, they don't seem to be maturing as a person. They seem cut off from their emotions. You know, what's that about? And, you know, a lot of kind of criticism has come toward the spiritual path as maybe something that gets us to avoid growing up, you know, developing ourselves in other ways, maturing as a person. And so I think what that makes us aware of is that can happen, and we can use spiritual techniques, you know, we can use transcendence to try to get away from the challenges, the growing up challenges of life. And that's where I said, you know, it comes down to our motivation. If you want to use meditation to medicate and, you know, get away from, numb out and get away from life, you could use it for that. Not now, if you really meditated wholeheartedly and, you know, and took it all the way, it would ultimately undermine that, and you'd come face to face with yourself and have to confront things. But, you know, we can certainly use any of this to get away from what needs to happen. But what I would say, and this is actually what I mean by integral enlightenment, which is my kind of the name of my work. My website is Integral Enlightenment. What I really mean by integral is, I mean that if we engage the spiritual path holistically, that it will drive all of the maturation and growing up and healing that we need to do to really develop into a full human being, you know, a fully mature, more than mature human being who has really dealt with all their issues, faced into their shadows and blind spots, seen into their own destructive tendencies and really moved beyond them. That all of that, you know, when the path is engaged in a holistic or integral way, all of that gets kind of swept into the vortex of transformation that we're becoming or getting pulled into. So, but, you know, that, like I said, it won't necessarily just happen on its own if we meditate, for instance. And, you know, and I mean, in my Integral Enlightenment course, I actually kind of talk about 3 core dimensions of the path that need, well, more than 3, but I'll try to boil it down to 3. You know, there's the meditative work, which we've been speaking about here and even experimented with a little around the discovery of consciousness, the discovery of who we are beyond the mind. And we've talked here about the importance of that and the power of that. There's also the discovery of the evolutionary impulse, which is the manifest kind of creative dimension of spirit. And it's not just that pure consciousness and stillness beyond time and change. It's the driving creative principle that is also who we are. And it really, it has a kind of powerful moral center to it, meaning that this evolutionary impulse wants us to be good. It wants us to be true. It wants us to be an expression of our highest potential. And as we tap into it, it starts to pull us onto the straight and narrow of life. Now, but for that to really work, there has to be an additional component, which we're just starting to get into a little bit there, which is that we have to be really willing to face into our own ego. We have to really be able and to learn what the obstacles are within us, which has to do with our habitual tendencies, our conditioned habits, our fixed ways of seeing the world, and that there's a whole outdated sort of software or operating system at work in us that we have to become aware of and start to observe it, so that we can not get caught in the old momentum. So it's sort of like we're doing this spiritual work of meditation and activating the evolutionary impulse, and that's creating a new momentum, a new force in our life. But there's this very ancient momentum still running right next to it, trying to pull us into the old way, the old unconscious limiting way of being. And so unless we become fully aware of that old momentum and study it, become a scientist who's really observing our own outdated system, it will continue to pull us off track. But if we bring it into the light, this is often called the shadow, we bring the shadow into the light and look at it, now it can't ensnare us so easily. And so then we start to get more and more momentum on the path, and ultimately this greater power that we're discovering just propels us out beyond all that in a way that it can't really pull us back anymore. But that takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment.
And you just mentioned that you can really activate the evolutionary impulse. That made me curious. Yeah. How would that look like?
Well, okay, so this is actually kind of an essential part of all of this work that I teach, is the idea of what I call direct awakening. So the practice of direct awakening, which I teach as a meditation course, primarily, is based on the idea that that all of these higher parts of ourself, whether it's our true nature beyond the mind, or that absolute self that Ramana Maharshi points to. I keep seeing his picture there next to you. So, whether we're talking about that dimension, or whether we're talking about this what I call the evolutionary self, which is sort of the human face of the creative principle, or the evolutionary force. These higher aspects of these sort of twin higher aspects of our true nature they already exist fully formed. So they're not something that is outside of us that we need to get to. They're not latent capacities or potentials that we need to grow and develop. They're here all the time, fully ready to live your life. They're just, God is ready to live your life right now, fully formed right here. And the only reason that that's not happening is that we're distracted by something else. We're caught in a trance of something else. And so we need to break the trance and learn how to shift our attention to these already existent potential, dimensions of who we are. So that's kind of the fundamental premise of direct awakening, is that you can step into it right now. That you can, if you can just learn how to see it and how to shift your attention there, that immediately you have access to it. It is not far away. And so we did a little experiment earlier, where I was like, oh, let's bring our attention to consciousness. It's right here. Let's not assume we need to go through a process of years and years to discover the mystery of consciousness. Let's just bring our attention to it, notice its qualities, and maybe some of us had an experience of that even in that few minutes. So with the evolutionary impulse, or the evolutionary self, it's the same. It's how can we right now begin to notice what it's like to shift our attention into this dimension of self. So we could do a little experiment with that too. Yeah, okay, so let's see. So we could do this by just in this moment. I want to invite you to just bring your attention, all of us here, bring your attention to the part of yourself that gets excited by change. You know, there's obviously a part of all of us that doesn't like change, that gets afraid of change, that holds on to the way things are. But there's another part of us that gets excited when things change. It's the part of yourself that when your plans don't work out, like let's say you're traveling on a trip and suddenly your plane gets canceled and you have to stay in a city where you didn't plan to stay. And, you know, part of you just can't stand that your trip spoiled, but another part of you suddenly wakes up and says, I wonder what's going to happen. Wow, we don't know where we're going to stay. We don't know who we're going to meet. We don't know what we're going to do. And it's this open kind of curious excitement. So just allow yourself to notice this part of yourself. It gets excited by change. It's the part of you that is on the spiritual path, seeking, actively trying new things. Probably got you to sign up for this series that you're listening to now, and to come and give your attention to it because you want to grow. You want to grow and change and become something that you are not yet. So feel this part of you that is always wanting to go further, do the new, try something new, become something that you're not. And I want you to notice that this is an essential aspect of your nature. And it's actually a force of evolution, and it's a force of change. It's got energy and movement and dynamism. And I also want to invite you to recognize that this part of yourself is in fact the same impulse that has been driving the whole universe into existence. Ever since the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, there's been this upward forward thrust that first gave birth to the primordial stars and planets and the galaxies, and ultimately life on Earth and the explosive flourishing of life, and now human consciousness and the explosive flourishing of technology and innovation and creativity and art, and all of this just arising out of this one essential evolutionary impulse surging forward that is now alive in you as your own self. This evolutionary impulse that the same energy that created the cosmos is in fact you. You are the same energy, and you're a steward of it, and your choices are an expression of it. And just allow yourself to let go of every idea of limitation, every idea of who you are as a limited being, and just allow yourself to step into this powerful, really unlimited power and creativity and positivity, because it's a big yes. Also, it's a big yes to everything. It's a big surging positive smile from the heart of the universe, and that's also your nature. And just allow yourself to fully be in that right now without any idea of anything else, and just notice the quality of your consciousness as the evolutionary impulse. Notice what's there. Notice that it's powerful, it's strong, it's kind of undaunted, it's kind of unstoppable in its nature. It's very free, it's very unproblematic. There's no problems here, there's just possibilities. And now just make a commitment to live your life from this always, and everything will work out. So, you know, in a couple minutes, there's just a little example of, again, how we can bring our attention to something that's always here, but often isn't where our attention is because of the momentum of believing we're something else and being in a habit energy from somewhere else.
And in a way, what I sense when I go there, and I just notice that I'm that's so strongly pulsating in me since my childhood. I feel it. It's like a high voltage electric energy or something like that. It's like life
Yeah.
itself. It's life. And it
Yeah. It's
does,
the life force.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mind so much what my personality likes or not. And when I really
Right.
surrender to that and make decisions from that, they
Mm.
can look very different than my personal limited decisions would look like. And when I give authority to that, I often kind of I look at myself and I wonder, are you really sure?
Good.
But
Yeah, what you just named is beautiful articulation of why this is so significant, actually. Because you said, when I really stand in that, when I'm really let myself live from that or embody that that my normal preferences, the things I normally would think are important and normally maybe aren't so important. And this is why the awakening of the evolutionary impulse is so revolutionary for a human life, is that it realigns your priorities, it realigns your values, it realigns your choices, your decisions on every level from the top down. You're in touch with a new North Star that's beyond you. I mean, beyond you as a limited person. You're now in touch with a universal consciousness and a universal agenda, if you will, that will bring you into alignment with it if you are willing to surrender to it and let it. You gave a good example when you said, part of you that's used to your life being organized around something different suddenly says, whoa, what happened to me? What are you doing? It's you're really noticing this new power and consciousness taking you over, and it's good, and you can feel that it's good, but it's also, where's it coming from? It's coming from somewhere mysterious that your mind doesn't really know.
and it often really pushes me out of my comfort zone, out of what
Right.
I know, out of what I can control. But it's so strong that I also it doesn't. I never thought of trying to argue or fight with it because it's
Ah,
it's
ah,
it's bigger,
ah.
it's stronger. But in a way, what also is amazing, that still this little self or this I don't know, which has preferences or is more limited, is still kind of, it doesn't has the authority, it's not the boss, but
Mm-hmm,
it's still running in a way. Yeah. So but
mm-hmm,
what I also can see,
mm-hmm.
that I don't, over the years, I don't take it that serious anymore. I'm aware of it, I notice it, but as I said, the
Mm-hmm.
authority is really there.
Well, and this is what we find. What we find is that the more unconditionally we give ourselves to what you're calling that authority, that command from within, the more we surrender to it, the more we give ourselves to it, the less influence the small self from of the past has over our choices. The more we start to just notice, oh, there's that voice in my ear again, that little voice, but I know that. I know it for what it is, and I'm aligning with something else much deeper now. You know, and at that point, what you start to realize is, if in fact the habits of the unevolved or unawakened self or ego structure, if those habits really are not influencing your behavior anymore because you're now so deeply aligned with something else, it doesn't really matter that they're still there in your ear, because you're not listening. If you were still listening and letting them influence you, then yeah, you want to keep going until you're not listening. But we often imagine the path as, oh, all that's just going to go away, and I'm going to be at peace in my higher self and totally unified, and I will never even have an impulse to do anything unwholesome or unhealthy or destructive or old out of fear, whatever. But and we can, and that may happen. I mean, it can happen that those impulses all die away because we haven't given them any attention for so long that they just, it can happen. But it doesn't matter if that happens. What matters is that we become so deeply aligned consistently that our life is now an expression of that depth, that richness that we've discovered. And if our life is expressing that and we're aligned with that, then what else really needs to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And Craig, what was the third thing you mentioned? Because
the work on the ego. I was saying, so there's the awakening to who we are beyond the mind and time, the absolute self. There's the awakening to the evolutionary self, this creative principle, and then there's facing into all the habit energy and momentum that keeps trying to reassert itself. And kind of those three components, if we're really working all three of those actively, it makes for a pretty holistic path. Kind of everything else will flow out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I also would like to address is, I mean, there is a value in this where really each individual you could say, makes its homework. But there is also a component in when we come together, when we connect in groups, in larger fields, and bring that, or let's say, where this is our highest priority and where we all surrender to that. So could you say a bit more about the value of really connecting in that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's in our contemporary modern culture, we tend to think of ourselves as individuals. There's been a lot of emphasis on the strengthening of the individual, our individuation. And we kind of think I'm this person going through life making choices, and I'm self-possessed and I'm self-determining and all of this. But it's kind of a new idea, really, in the history of humanity, to see ourselves as these isolated individuals. It wasn't really that way historically, but we kind of see ourselves that way now. And of course, if you look a little deeper, it's not true at all. We are so influenced by each other all the time. Watch one of your friends, family members, how they change depending on who they're talking to. Our personality changes depending on, we're talking to the shopkeeper, or we're talking to our close friends, or we're talking to our parents, or we're talking to our children. We are relational inherently, and we live in relational fields, and our outlook on life, what we believe to be true, our habitual behaviors are all influenced in very strong ways by the people we associate with and who we're around. And so then a person who wants to spiritually awaken has a little bit of a challenge on their hands, because you say, well, I'm so powerfully influenced by everyone around me, and yet I want to awaken to these higher, deeper dimensions of who I am. But if all the people around me aren't doing that, then they're essentially going to be creating a drag or a kind of gravity that's holding me down when I want to soar, and then we naturally start to ask, well, what would it be like to be in communion with and in relationship with all other people who are trying to soar as well, and who are really letting go of the kind of unconscious habits of our past and the egoic ways of relating to the world, and who are really stretching into higher consciousness. What's the power of being in relationship in that? And we start to say, oh, now instead of feeling like everyone's trying to kind of hold me down, now everyone's trying to lift me up, and we're doing it together. And that that transforms our experience of life. It's obviously, this is very tricky territory. I have a whole section of my Integral Enlightenment course where I go into relationships and what it is to be in an evolutionary relationship and group, and how we navigate this, because it's such a big part of our life, and it's obviously a very big challenge for us, most of us. And so I guess what I just want to underline the point you're making, that there is a power in doing it together, because we're all, we're all always influenced by each other. So let's get into spheres of influence that are positive and uplifting and spiritually charged, where everyone's awakening together. That's just going to add enormous momentum, kind of exponential power and momentum to our own path. And by that, of course, I'm just referring to our relationships in general. But then I think you're speaking also about, well, what happens when we come in a circle together and explore higher consciousness together. And that can have tremendous catalytic power for everyone involved. In my programs, some of my advanced programs, we will do different kinds of circles, what we call co-meditation or awakening through conversation, where we're with a group of people and we're all stretching to express from beyond the mind and ego, express from the evolutionary impulse, express from the unmanifest dimensions, and bring those into expression together. And often the experience we have in that is that we're instantly lifted into another dimension of consciousness that on our own we might have really had to work hard. Really had to meditate hard, or really had to do some real work to make that shift. But because everyone's doing it together, and we're all, it's sort of like we're each throwing a log on the fire in the center of the circle every time we speak, and it's getting warmer and warmer and lifting, drawing us all into it. So it's a beautiful thing to do. And I in many ways, if we were to say, what's the single most important thing we could do on our spiritual path, I might say, well, you need to do your daily meditation. I might say, oh, you need to go on retreats and really spend time, or you need to really face into your ego, so it's not true. You might need to really focus on activating this evolutionary impulse in daily life. But really, in the end, the most important thing is to surround yourself with other people who are doing the same thing, because that will add such a power to your own path, and spend time in circle and doing that work. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Craig, we are almost coming to the end of our time together, and
it's been lovely.
Is there, do you have a resonance, maybe kind of guiding us a bit, that we all now, being in the space and being present here, really connect to that field of connectivity and communion we are in with this?
Yeah, let's spend a few minutes just so I just want to invite all of us now to just let go of all the words and all the thoughts and everything that's been shared here, and just allow it all to just sort of cook in your being, to just sort of simmer and cook, and allow us to just sit here resting in the spirit of everything that's been shared. And I want to invite you to notice the quality of the space between us. Allow yourself to feel the presence of everyone else who's tuning into this, whether it's even in the same time as you're listening, everyone who's listening at any time. Just notice the collective consciousness that's formed. And allow it to fill you up and free you from anything that you imagine is in your way. And allow yourself to give your energy to this group, to this collective awakening that's happening right now. Stepping out beyond the comfortable, the familiar, the known, into the mystery of consciousness and evolution. Just resting in the infinite depth of being and becoming. And as we bring our session today to an end, just want to invite us all to anchor ourselves in this depth, in this consciousness, and allow it to flow out into our lives and our days in whatever ways it does naturally. And just making a commitment to give this gift of consciousness to the world in whatever way is true to who we are.
I really thank you so much, Craig, for bringing your wisdom, your presence, your joy, your passion, your humor, your beautiful way of putting words to things which are so difficult sometimes to put words to, and really appreciate, because I know you are very busy with your programs. You are really evolved in a lot of things, and I don't take it for granted. It's really beautiful.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this, and it's been a delight to be with you and feel your energy and passion for all this coming forth, and your vulnerability and innocence. And I just want to appreciate everyone who came to be part of this, and thank you for helping create the field together, and blessings on your journey. If you want to learn more about me and my work, just check out my website, which is integralenlightenment.com. Integralenlightenment.com. There are a lot of free resources on there, and there's also links to various courses that I offer on different aspects of what we've shared. And so you can play around on there if you feel so moved, and just encourage you to really dive deep into the rest of this series and gain all the wisdom from all the other teachers that are here. So
Thank you so
again.
much for
Thank you. It's been lovely.
whatever you share. Great.
Okay.